not saved. And people say, well, they refer to the Father. Well, you got to remember that God created the lost and the saved. You know what I'm saying? We either our Heavenly Father in one sense is the creator of all life. And so he's the great maker. And others look at that he was one that backslid and got away from God. But either way, what we want you to see is the elder brother, his attitude. And I trust that we can learn something from the way that he reacted to his brother, to what happened to his brother. And I trust that it will be a blessing and source of encouragement for you. And so right now, we on the area.
Yeah.
Oh, we are? Okay, great.
I'm just trying to adjust.
We got a bird in here. How about that? How did he get in here? Okay.
Must have already been in here.
All right, so talk about the elder brother here. And,
I think it's a bat.
The bat.
Look at a bat.
Okay.
That man's here.
It's an Indiana brown bat.
That's why they called it
You know
came
what
from
it
there.
is, Jara?
Okay.
He sees your mask.
All right. We'll go ahead and get started. Back bothering anybody? Don't let him drive you batty, okay?
No.
So, but notice, begin reading verse 25, chapter 15. Now his elder son was in the field, and as he came and drew nigh to the house, he heard the music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said unto him, Thy brother is come, and thy father hath killed the fatted calf, because he hath received him safe and sound. And he was angry, and would not go in. Therefore came his father out and entreated him. And he answered and said to his father, Lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgress I at any time thy commandment. And yet thou never gavest me a kid, that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as thy son was come, which hath devoured thy living with harlots, thou hast killed for him the fatted calf. And he said unto him, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. It was meet that we should make merry and be glad, for this thy brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. And so, as we look at these verses again, I feel like we can learn from the elder brother, and I trust that as we share this with you to help you. Again, as we look at the elder brother, not who he was, please, but he's the type of person that lives today. And you can find him in every church. You can find him in every Christian circle. And so the elder brother is presented, as it said here, it says, refer to him as a son. And as it says in verse 25, and also as a servant. So he is a perfect illustration of a carnal Christian, of one who is born again, as it says in John chapter 1, verses 12 through 14. And I want to share those verses with you right now. But it says, But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, which were not born of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor the will of man, but of God. The Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory. The glory is the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. And so as we look at those verses, we see that he was definitely saved, if you please, according to this picture we have here. But he, how would you put it? He just didn't have his father's heart. He didn't have the compassion that his father had for the son that had been wayward. And so we see a vast difference here, and how sad. Folks, we should all have a desire to have the same compassion that God has. People should be able to see something in us. They should be able to see love and identify that love with the Lord Jesus Christ. And so again, as we look at this young man here, the elder brother, it says, we see that he wasn't excited. And it's sad because it says he became angry when he asked the servant, he said, what means this, the music and dancing and all the merriment? What's going on here? And he said, well, your brother's come home. And I think the servant, I think he was excited, your brother's come home. And there was some excitement because they shared with the father and the excitement of his wayward son coming back home. And yet we see it said he got angry when he heard the report that his brother had come back. And folks, we need to be willing to accept those that have done wrong, those that have fallen by the wayside. We need to be concerned for them and do all that we can to encourage them to come back. And how sad to think that somebody would become jealous because, wow, Brother so-and-so, it's so good to have you here, and get to celebrate the fact that they're back in church, And somebody might say, well, they said bad things about you. And I can't help but wonder if maybe the son, when he left, maybe he told everybody, my father's just an old geezer, man. He's just one of those old-fashioned, type guys. And he just doesn't know what's right. He doesn't know, he doesn't know where it's really at. And no doubt he may have criticized his father many times and said awful lines about his father and his family. And again, don't tell what I said about his elder brother. And my elder brother, he's a hypocrite. He just this and that and everything else. And he was always telling me what to do, what not to do. And he was always better than me. And all those things may be true to a point. But folks, when we're not right with God, or if we're not saved, we're not right with God, it's terrible the things that can happen and that they pass on if we please. But notice how the Lord makes it so clear here that when we become the Son of God, we have the power, the authority of the Father to help us to do the things that we need to do and to have a right heart. The elder brother, please, was filled with a horrible spirit of envy and jealousy toward his brother. And folks, I hope that would never be reported of any of us. That because God has blessed someone of our group, if you please, or maybe someone that's maybe part of our church, but they've gotten blessed. And you might look around and say, well, so-and-so's church, they're doing this and doing that, and man, they have this and that, and just all sorts of wonderful things happening there. Should we be jealous? Or should we praise the Lord that God is blessing that church, and blessing that pastor, and those people as they're doing the work for God? Mm-hmm. And so we need to make sure that we have a right attitude. And folks, too many times, I think we're looking for comfort in the fact, well, so-and-so's church is down too. Our pastor so-and-so is really discouraged because of COVID-19. And we have to be careful because that's becoming an elder brother. You know what I'm saying? And that's becoming guilty of the same things that he was guilty of when he was upset concerning his brother coming back. He should have been the first one to rejoice that his brother's back. Now he can share the load with him, and other things that could be involved in having him back. But we see how forcefully he is portrayed in verses 25, 26, and 27. And so how does jealousy work? What a cruel and terrible thing jealousy is. In Proverbs 27, verse 4, God says this concerning jealousy. He says, wrath is cruel and anger is outrageous. But who is able to stand before envy? And so you see the comparison of what God said. He said, these are terrible things. But then he comes back to envy, if you please. Jealousy is even worse. Who can stand against that? You can't even reason against it. Sometimes it's just amazing how people can look at someone else and it just seems like, their life is so much better than mine. It just seems like, why is God blessing them? They're not that much better than me. Well, they're not better. Look out, folks. God says that's very, very dangerous, terrible thing to allow that to happen in our life. I'm going to read the verse again one more time for emphasis. Wrath is cruel, and how true that is. And anger is outrageous. You ever see somebody get angry and do stupid things? I'll tell you, every time I get angry, I do such nice things. It's terrible. We don't want to go there. But it's a frightening thing, anger is. But notice again what it says. It says, but who is able to stand before envy? Because what happens is you can reason with somebody that's angry. You can talk to them. And usually they can say, yeah, that was stupid. I don't know what I was thinking when I said that. And then somebody has a moment of wrath or whatever. Usually they look back and say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done it. I misjudged the situation. I feel like such an idiot now. But when it comes to jealousy or envy, it's something that they keep dwelling on. And they'll say, I'm glad God's blessing him. But you can kind of catch the tone, but they're not really that glad. And in essence, they're saying, well, isn't God bless the Lord, than him? Wow, what a tragedy. Then notice again, as we think of jealousy, it can be seen in the face and heard in the voice. Jealousy is killing, it says in Proverbs chapter 6, verses 34 and 35. Listen to what God has to say concerning jealousy. He says, for jealousy is the rage of a man. Therefore he will not spare in the day of vengeance. He will not regard any ransom, neither will he rest content, though thou givest many gifts. So once somebody gets that old green-eyed monster of jealousy in them, it becomes really hard for them to accept that person that they're jealous of. No matter what that person might do to try to undo whatever it was that caused the jealousy, it's hard. It's a very vicious thing. It's almost, I'd say, impossible. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say impossible without God's help. We have to have God's help when it comes to dealing with jealousy. So we see this elder brother, and we can go on about all his good qualities. He was faithful to follow his father. He listened to the commandments and obeyed his father to the nth degree. He was always one that he could always count on, and he knew how to, if he pleased, to share the load and others, to help others to do the work, and maybe even encourage other workers. And he had so many good qualities. He was always there. You could always lean on him, like, if you please, the right arm. But that jealousy, can you see the destruction and the harm where he should have been rejoicing? He wasn't. The elder brother, as a result of this attitude that he had toward his younger brother, if you please, we found that his service, he looked at it more as a drudgery instead of a delight. When you look closely at the verses here in 28 and 29, it's almost like he's saying this. He said, as he's pointing to it, like he was just a servant. He definitely wasn't lazy, as I said a moment ago. But he says, these many years have I been slaving for you, is what it amounts to. And folks, I can't think of anything harder than having to work somewhere where you really don't want to work. Having to do something you don't enjoy. And here was this elder brother, if you please. On the outward appearances, he was doing everything right. He was doing his time, so to speak. But he didn't look at it, well, thank God that he's blessed my father like he has. Thank God that I have a position, that I have a job I can work. Thank God that I can help other people as I serve my father and as we take care of the needs of others in this area, and as it takes care of us. And wow, what a blessing that I have. My boss is my father, and he loves me. How many people have a boss like that? You know what I'm saying? He had all these good things that he could look at and all these good things in his life. And yet he looked at it in a totally negative way. And folks, I'm excited about Antioch Baptist Church. I'm excited about the things that we've done through the years. And if the Lord tarries his coming, I'm excited and looking forward to some greater days ahead of us. But again, it's something that we all have to work and strive for, and work together to do what we can to encourage others also to do the right thing. As we look at this brother, this elder brother again, we can't help but see that his service and everything was marked with a certain amount of carnality, that his flesh was concerned. I mean, he immediately said, well, my brother, I've served you all these years. And, man, he comes home and you never give me a kid. He was downgraded. You given him a fatted calf. But you had to give me a kid, the least thing that we got so many of them. Why couldn't you do that so I could have fun with my friends also? So the elder brother, I think we can say this quite clearly, he was dominated by self. And folks, we need to be careful. If we keep putting ourselves before everyone else, that's going to lead to some serious troubles. And it's so sad that so many times we have this tendency to think, well, what's in this for me? And I'm afraid that many people, they think to come to church, they're thinking in terms of, well, what's in it for me if I come to church? What do you got to offer me? What do you have? And folks, I feel like we have some good things to offer people. And we try to share with them how they can have a better relationship with God. And by that, it's God having a better relationship with them in that sense. But as we look at verse 29, I can't help but see that he seemed to be very, very self-righteous. And he answered and said to his father, Lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgressed I at any time thy commandment, and yet ye never gavest me a kid, that I may make merry with my friends. Can you see the eye problem here? He was looking at all the things that was being done for his brother. And so again, he gave the picture, if you please, of a very self-righteous person that knows how he emphasized his good qualities, if you want to, call it, and they were good qualities. He was self-centered. He was full of self-pity. I don't know if you can see him sucking his thumb there or not, but I can kind of see him spiritually sucking his thumb. But I've done all these things for me, and my brother, he's done nothing but brought shame to the family. He's been living a harlot and been living riotous life, not righteous life, riotous life. He's brought shame upon our name. And here you are, honoring, and you've done nothing for me after all I've done for you. He was well self-satisfied with what he had done. And yet, folks, I think if he'd been more sincere in having a right relationship with his father and having a right relationship with God, I think he could have looked at things and he could have seen things so differently. And folks, I believe that it's a good thing to do this every now and then. And that is to look at the brother. What drove him away from the home? Was it the love of the father that drove him away from the home? Was it the fact that his father's old buddy died? Or was it because maybe his brother was so self-righteous and so hard to work with and work for that he just took all he could take and he wanted no more and he wanted to die? I kind of feel like that may have been part of it, mine. And folks, I hate to think that I've been guilty of running people away from the church or running people away from a relationship with the Lord. But there's no doubt in my mind that there's people that feel that way. And I think I'll know my heart, those that are here, that I would never intentionally run somebody away from this church or run them away from the Lord. And yes, I realize that people can take things and they'll blow them on portion and make it sound like you've done something really, really awful when really it wasn't that bad, if you please. That the devil knows how to cause problems. As I look at this, the older brother also had a larger portion that was going to be given to him. He was going to have a double portion of what was given to his younger brother. And I can go on and on, all the things that he had. But I'll put it this way. As we look at the older brother, and I feel like he definitely had a part with his brother running off. I think maybe if he had talked to his brother and had tried to comfort his brother and reason with his brother, that maybe his brother would stay. But I feel, again, that the brother, folks, sometimes we can be so right that we're sorry. I'll put it this way. Martha and I were talking about this earlier today, just before services, actually. We're to be the salt of the earth, right? Salt is known as a preservative. Let me ask you, have you ever gotten too much salt in a portion of maybe chili or potatoes or something, and there was so much salt you just, oh wow, and maybe because of where you're at, you're gonna have, I'm full now. You ever had that experience? But what happened? Salt's good. We all agree salt's good, but there comes a point sometimes where we can pour too much salt into something, and even though normally it'd be really good, and maybe you got your expectations. I got to have a baked potato today. It was a yellow baked potato, but I thought it was good. It reminded me of butter because it was yellow and the meat color. And I don't know, did you put some salt on that? It's very salt. Yeah, she put some salt on. But can you imagine? You hadn't had potatoes in a long time, and maybe it's French fries or something. I'm sorry, I like potatoes. But anyhow, and it looks so good, and suddenly you get into, what happened here? So, I'm sorry, I had an accident. The little 2-year-old came over and he poured the salt in there, but I didn't want to waste it. Are we sometimes guilty of pouring too much salt on someone and turning them off to the Lord? Even though we meant well, but we just poured it on. Maybe that brother was guilty of that very night. Said, you need to do this, you need to do that, and you didn't do that, And folks, no doubt the brother could have been telling the right things, but his attitude was just a little salty, should we say. And so sometimes, folks, there's ways to witness to people. And I think perhaps one of the most cruelest or meanest ways that you can witness somebody is just come and say, hey, you're going straight to hell, you dirty rat. You deserve to go to hell too. Well, is that true if they're lost? Back up a little bit. Isn't that true of us, that we deserve hell? And that we're rotten sinners too? But we're sinners saved by grace. And what a tragedy is sometimes people come on, and it's because it makes them feel superior. Poor soul. I'll go ahead and make a confession. We get slugs around the house every now and then. And I look at poor Saul, almost like watch the show up. I'm sorry. Other carefully. Okay. But anyhow, they're nasty ones. And our dog, she likes my salt. But anyhow, I'm psychic. But what I'm saying, too much salt will kill a lot of things. And too much salt can kill our witness, folks. Again, we are the salt of the earth. But there's only so much that we can do to win someone to Christ. We need God's help to win people to Christ and not become guilty of what this older brother became guilty of. And so again, as we look at it, no doubt this older brother, right now as we look at it, we've heard a lot of complaining from him, haven't we? And another thing that seems to them about is a lot of ingratitude. All those things seem to be visible, even though he was a son, even though he was part of the family, even though he was a believer, there was a lot of things that were lacking in his life. And it's strange that his brother coming back from the terrible riotous living that says that he was living, came back and was more right with God than his elder brother was, who had been faithful in church. I'm using that. Been faithful on the job, serving his father. The elder brother showed no concern or sympathy for the lost. When you think of all the things that the little brother was involved in, and how sad that was. But do you realize that that little brother, he got his heart right? And again, if I say fantasizing, I don't know, that sounds kind of scary, don't it? But if you think about, if he really got right with God, do you think maybe he might have had enough concern to go back and talk to those lost friends that he had in the world? That they may have been able to say, hey, what happened to you? You're not the same. That you've changed. You seem so happy now. You seem so old, but what's going on? And he would have a testimony and say, hey, I got back home and I was allowed to come back in and I'm a son. And he could go home and say, man, my father, the first thing he did, he killed a fatted calf and he put a ring on my hand again, showed that I was a son. He went ahead and put a new robe on me, and man, I smelled like a dead hog. I mean, I smelled really bad. And he'd just go and he'd give a wonderful testimony because his father, if he please, was right with God. It was a picture of God. And this elder brother had said, I'd like to meet your friends, your old friends. We'll call them friends. Were they really friends? Because you notice that when his buddy ran out, his friends ran out too. And ended up substituting his friends for hogs. But anyhow, the older brother was out of sympathy with his father. And I mentioned that in the very beginning. That was what was so sad in this story. As we look at this rich story, I had an English professor, and he said this back in high school, actually. And he said this, and he did not like the Bible, he did not like God. But he said, the story of the prodigal son is the most perfect short story ever written. And he wouldn't even believe it. But that's what he said about the story. It is such a unique story. And how many times have you seen something portrayed on maybe on TV or somewhere else that you've seen it portrayed, the story maybe from a more modern version or whatever type thing. But as we look at it again, the father had one burden, one longing, one passion, and that was to see his lost son saved and restored, if he please. But did the elder brother share this burden, this travail, if you please? No. Do we, while we are content for sinners to remain in the far country and to die in their sins, how little we share the passion, the love of the Spirit of our Master is not seen in us. Matthew 9:36 says it this way. But when he saw the multitude, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd. You see, instead of Jesus looking at the people, these stupid idiots, why should they come out here? They didn't bring on lunch, or they didn't come out prepared, and what's wrong with them? Folks, they come to hear him preach. So that was good. And as a result, they weren't totally prepared for the situation. But you see, clearly he says he had compassion on them. And he was able to fulfill, or if you please, to do a great miracle to take care of the needs of his people. And folks, when people have problems, we can look at several ways and go, oh no, he called again. Wonder how much money he wants this time. Or I wonder what he needs this time. Or I wonder, can we look at it? Well, I can just, and you know what has amazed me, how many times that's happened in my situation. And people say, the other churches, they won't help him, but you always do. How come Antioch is so different? And folks, it's sad. Some of the things that people have to go through to get help. And I hope that I never get in that position where I have to go and beg for money. But we need to be willing to help if we can, and do what we can to make a difference. And when people have problems, that's where we can introduce them to Christ. And that's where we can show them that Christ can make a difference if we have the right compassion. And then notice in Luke chapter 19, verse 10. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost. Okay, isn't that a tremendous thought? Why did Jesus come into the world to show who he was, what he was? Well, in one sense, yes. But he came to seek and to save that which was lost. And in Galatians chapter 6, verse 1, brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, in heaven we all have our faults. Ye which are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. So folks, let's keep a right attitude toward others. And we never know how close that person might be to getting right with God. Man, they're just totally backslidden, going off on the deep end or whatever. You'll never see them in church again. We've had a man, and he just shared it with me years ago. He said, you'll never see me in Antioch again. He's been here a number of times since that time. He doesn't live in the area anymore. But what I'm saying, it's exciting when God works in the heart of someone. You never know what God can do. But folks, I want God to be able to use me. And if I have a right attitude, God can use me. If I don't get too salty, God can use me. And if I have sympathy for them, and maybe sometimes in my case, have the spiritual gift of mercy, just put myself in their place and think with them. So then you can look back on my life and go, he may have taken it this way when I said that. And then you realize, I hope he did take it, but then you begin to realize that maybe he did take it that way. And the devil has a heyday. So folks, just always be willing to humble ourselves and to share that we do love and have compassion for others. Okay, so let's learn from the elder brother what we should do, okay? And yet, you can look at some of his good qualities too, and we can learn from those, but have a right spirit and right attitude when we do those, okay? Would you stand to your feet as we begin our invitation? Lord, thank you for this time we can come together and study your word, and help us as we look upon this elder brother. May we learn from him, as it clearly indicates that he was a believer and that he knew you. But Lord, he got cold and indifferent doing your work. And that can happen to us too. It's so easy to become bitter. It's so easy to become jealous. And Lord, help us to avoid all these things, anger and so forth, wrath, all these things that can come, they're all kind of tied together in one sense. Help us, Lord, to have that spirit of love, of compassion, of true concern for others, making more of others than ourselves. For we ask this in your Son's precious name. Amen. Folks, God bless you. Have a great week, okay? And we'll look forward to seeing you Sunday, if not before.